son, unfuck this mess. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And we're made in the image of the Lord. Well, more me than you. My name is Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film The Shape of Water.
If I take the shape of water, will you take the form of a bucket?
Form of bucket. Wonder Twins. Activate. That, you know, Shahir, the Shape of Water, I mean, it could be anything.
It really, yeah, I mean, Bruce Lee said that the most powerful the most powerful weapon in the world is water. So be like water.
There you go. And Bruce, enter what was that real garbage Bruce Lee movie that came out this year?
The one about his life.
But it wasn't about his life. It was about his weird, maybe he was his friend's life.
Yeah, I haven't given up. I know Wong Kar-wai made The Grandmaster.
Beginning of the Dragon. I don't fucking know. Anyway, we're not talking about that. We're going to talk about a good film.
The Shape of Water.
Yes, that is right. I was
going to say the form of a bucket.
The form of a bucket? Oh, dear.
What was the Wonder Twins monkey? Zeke?
I don't think I've honestly, you know what?
You're the comic book guy.
My nerd card away. I don't think I saw one.
Zeke. I'm pretty sure it was Zeke.
One episode about the Wonder Twins. I just know the meme ability of it.
Oh man, I used to love the Wonder Twins.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Did you try out to be the third Wonder Twin?
I should have been the third Wonder Twin.
So listeners, before we get into the actual film review, hello, Shahir, aka also known as Almost the Black Power Ranger, found his headshot.
I did. We found my headshot from my Power Rangers day, and it is. I have not aged well.
It is not, and he won't show it to me.
No, you will never see it.
Maybe we make that a goal for something later on in the future.
No, because it's one of those headshots where it's like,
oh, you giving smolder eye?
Yeah, I'm smoldering.
Okay,
and I'm like, and I look at it now and I go, you stupid fuck.
Well, yeah, you were how old?
I would have been 21.
There you go. That's the perfect age to be a stupid fuck.
Yeah, but the thing is, you're smoldering, but you're also a stupid fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you know that now. But the goal was to make 16 or 17-year-olds be like, that dude's awesome.
Yeah, no, it was not cool.
All right.
There's a reason I wasn't the Black Power Ranger.
Okay, well, I've yet to see that reason.
Yeah, if there was a brown Power Ranger, I might have been it. But if you want to try and persuade me to to post that photo, which by the way, I will never, ever do. So don't even try.
No, you should try.
But if you want to try, you can email us in at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com or hit us up on Twitter at onlymoviepod, as people have been doing for the last couple of weeks while we've been away on vacation. By the way, welcome back from vacation.
Oh, yes, you too. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year's to you. Just before we move on, we know it's traditionally around this time of the year that we release our best of episode.
Yes.
We are going to push that back just ever so slightly because, and this is not a reason of laziness, we actually just want to try and get a few more films in that we think will make the cut.
We've made very strict rules on ourselves that we can only include films that we've reviewed.
Which I always break.
Which you always break anyway, so I don't know. We're making these rules to break them, but then making more to not. I don't know.
Yeah, so we're just trying to get in, we're trying to cram in just a few more movies.
Shove that cinema down all of our gullets.
Yeah, down our gullets so that we can make that best of a better, more comprehensive look at the year of 2017.
Yeah,
that
was the year. And we're going to try to do some special stuff with it. We're going to try to spruce it up a bit, so it's just taking a little more time on our zero budget.
Yeah, exactly. But the conversation around Star Wars continues as it does.
Episode 968.
Yes.
Email 24.
But we got some lovely emails about Star Wars. That I am not a fan of continuing the conversation around Star Wars.
But yet here we are. Keep it going.
But keep it going. Our listener Maya, who had previously emailed us about Lady Bird, which we talked about on our Mudbound review, emails us again. Thank you so much, Maya, for getting in touch with us. We love getting your emails. She just listened to our Star Wars podcast and knew that we were going to have a lot to talk about, but she wanted to give us our 2 cents, especially since she is not a Star Wars fan at all. I think we did ask for that, for people who weren't Star Wars fans,
we did.
What their opinions of Star Wars was. She starts this email telling us that the one thing that truly sucked about her movie experience was that the theater seemed to have a lower brightness. And she even says it felt like the film was filmed at 1 or 2 f-stops lower, which leads me to believe she might work in photography or in the film industry.
We are slowly building your personal and professional profile, Maya. Keep emailing us.
No, but anytime
we won't use it against you.
Anytime anyone mentions f-stops, I go, ooh.
You're like, ooh, yeah. What? All right.
This person might know a thing or two about optics. But she is not a Star Wars fan. I tried watching both the fourth and fifth movie while I sort of appreciated them, I wasn't in love with them. My parents never got me on the Star Wars track when I was a kid. I was never had an interest in seeing the prequels during my elementary, middle school years. And, you kind of dodged the bullet there.
Why do I feel like this email is going to just be in agreement with Shahir? I don't know. I'm guessing. Just keep it going.
Middle of the road. I saw The Force Awakens, and even though it was very nostalgic, I thought Rogue One was all right, but then this series wasn't for me. However, I did take the time to see Star Wars The Last Jedi, and while it was okay, I actually went to see Jumanji later that night and enjoyed it more than The Last Jedi.
Oof, I say that having not seen Jumanji
That's
yet.
true, but this actually points to a really interesting article that was in the Washington Post that a friend of mine tweeted out this week, which was about the idea that we should stop judging Star Wars movies on a curve, which is by saying we should stop judging them based on their relationship to the previous movies and start judging them as single movies on their own.
I think that'll start happening more and more just as these become yearly events. I
actually think it's happening less and less because we're seeing like a movie released every year and it's like, oh, well, maybe this wasn't that great, but it connects to this somehow.
I bet you, but don't ever discount people getting tired of a thing to further rip it apart. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So like, I do think it will wear the public down. Now, I'm saying all this. I'd also saying that I still really like The Last Jedi, and I think I'm judging it on its own. But I also understand some of the things now that I've perused Maya's email that she's going to be saying.
I mean, I don't want to give too much. I think we made the mistake of giving away too many spoilers in the last time we talked about The Last Jedi.
Oh, that is true.
But so I don't want to get into too much of what her specific grievances about the movie.
She did say she hated it when Palpatine came back in a Jar Jar mech.
Yeah, Jar Jar was back. Misa, so Palpatine-ish.
Yeah. Misa, do it.
I mean, I guess the main thing was she felt that the humor was off key and nobody laughed in her theater. It was awkward. She felt Laura Dern should have been introduced earlier in the movie.
Agreed.
And overall, yes, you're correct. I agree with Shahir about this movie. I felt it was all right, but not something exciting. I think all the materials there were for the movie, but weren't placed as smoothly as it should have been. Thanks, love your podcast again. Thank you, Maya, so much.
Yes,
for writing
thank you very much. Next time, write about a movie where you agree with me, though. That'd be nice.
I don't like being that person who like wants to shit all over this movie.
Yes, you do.
No, I really don't like being that person.
I feel like you live for it. I feel like you live for that, like I live for the MCU. Like I feel like it's
no. You're completely 100% wrong there. I want these movies to be good because of this next email I'm going to read.
Okay.
From Tom, who wrote on our Facebook page. He had written previously, and we talked about his discussion. I think I was a little bit dismissive last time because I am feeling the kind of weight of how much these films take up a cultural space where I just don't, and I just don't care enough about these movies. I don't think they merit the kind of cultural conversation that they garner.
Well, that's not a dismissive comment at all.
No, I don't know. I can't tell if you're being sarcastic or not on that one. But Tom just got around to listening to my response to that on the Star Wars discussion at the beginning around this message I sent in. I totally agree with Shahir. Again, I'm not making this up. That it is a bizarre amount of space for a not great film like Star Wars occupies in the social conscience. And I'm not going to carry on the debates about what the merits the film itself has. I will spare you that. As you say, it's been done to death. The thing is, I don't even like Star Wars that much. Not even the originals. They're fun, but they're not massively special to me, which I see as quite flawed in many ways. And yet I still end up getting caught up in the hype, especially in the analysis. This is quite interesting to me. It is no doubt correlated to the popularity of the franchise. The same applies to Marvel and previously Harry Potter too. These behemoths create a large part of the current social backdrop, and I think there is a psychological element that drives us to engage with them even if they aren't critically great. There's an element of wanting to fit in, of fearing that that without engaging would be left out of society. But I don't think that's the full story. I think there's also a drive to understand social norms which these fandoms become, that we need to analyze changes that sweep through our community and either adopt if positive or warn others if negative. Presumably this is something you spent a long time considering, so it'd be interesting to get your view on it. I have an opinion on this, Matt.
I do too. I think it's always, look, I think if you're not a Star Wars person, then this is something I've okay, no, let's back up. Let's even go to Harry Potter, and I could totally see the opposite of this. So Harry Potter was something that I have never felt a kinship to.
Okay.
I've felt I tried reading the books, I've watched a lot of the movies, and I just don't give a shit. I don't.
Yeah.
And so from that angle, I can totally understand the not giving a shit about Star Wars thing. I also understand this is something that happens to me, and I guess this is a sociological sort of feedback loop, but I get, and I'm going to say it, I get irrationally upset when people constantly praise Harry Potter.
Okay.
And it's on the gut level, I'm like, it's fucking stupid. They're magic rhymes, and it's all kiddie and nonsense and bullshit. And that's true sometimes, but it's definitely not true all the way. And I think it's because it's something that doesn't speak to me, but speaks to so many other people that instantly my gut lizard brain reaction is, well, everyone's wrong and I'm right, and this is stupid. Even though because
wouldn't that work for the MCU and Star Wars then as well, because they're so popular?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
I'm saying people that aren't fans of these franchises, I feel like will have the same sort of gut reaction or sort of dismissive reaction that I do towards Harry Potter.
Right.
I'm saying I don't think that reaction is entirely fair or correct, because what it comes down to, if I want to dig deep into myself and look at why I pour on the haterade for Harry Potter, it's because I feel left out.
Okay.
Because I don't enjoy them. They're and everyone enjoys them. Deep down, I'm like, well, maybe there's something wrong with me that I can't enjoy these films, or these books, or this world that has engrossed the planet.
It's because you're a muggle.
See, sure, but do you get what I'm saying? Like, there is an intrinsic oddity to not being part of the majority in a social aspect of something that literally comes up. Even the fact that you use the word muggle in my brain, I'm like, motherfucker, come on. It's like, but muggle is probably the same. People probably know the same amount of people know what a muggle is that know what a Jedi is.
Right.
And so I think there's some sort of correlation of not fitting in that might sort of poison this down the line as well. Do I think that's the entire thing? No. But that's how I approach the other side of it for things like Star Wars and Marvel, because I'm in the pro camp.
Okay.
More Marvel than Star Wars, really. What do you got? What do you think?
I want to make this really quick. We did touch on this in our Thor Ragnarok episode, and we were talking specifically about the movie The Florida Project.
Check out both those reviews, available online right now.
But specifically in Thor Ragnarok, we get into this topic a little bit as well, and I think there's a degree to which these films eclipse everything else because they are backed by a major corporation that has the marketing reach to basically penetrate our lives in almost every facet. So it's impossible to walk down a New York City street without seeing a Last Jedi, without seeing a Marvel, a Thor Ragnarok billboard, and it's impossible for smaller films to get in under that. Now, So I think that, to me, that's the reason why these films get judged on a curve, so to speak, where a film like The Last Jedi, which I think ostensibly is not a very particularly good movie, can take up so much cultural spaces because it just has it's a behemoth that is to be reckoned with. It is the empire at this point, and there's no denying it.
And you just used a Star Wars reference to describe the socioeconomic things of Star Wars.
Exactly. There you go.
I think the curve goes both ways. That's my sort of point. The curve you're saying exists,
yeah,
and mine does too.
But so I think the problem that I have with it, again, I try to watch these simply as movies. So from a Harry Potter point of view, I really enjoyed the Harry Potter series until it became a serialization issue, which I think happened around the Goblet of Fire. The Prisoner of Azkaban is clearly the best film there, made by the best director who worked on these movies, and that is Alfonso Cuarón. And there was a point at which I think it was in the Goblet of Fire or something like that, where it was like, oh, you're not making a movie anymore, you're making references to Harry Potter within your movie, and that's what the films have become. And there was I think it was the last one, the Half-Blood Prince Part 7A, where I was like, no, you know what? I'm out. I'm not giving any more money to these. I'm done. I'm not engaging in this exercise anymore. And I haven't seen the last one for that reason. I was like,
I haven't either, actually. Although they're all on HBO now. They're all
and
on
I was
HBO
just like,
Go.
you've done away with me. I do, but I think in all my dismissiveness, there is something to be said about something that Tom mentioned in his message to us, which is that the collective experience is important, and the debate around whether it's good or bad is an important debate to have. And I think as much as I wish that that a film like The Florida Project got more eyes on it. If a film like The Florida Project became as culturally relevant as Star Wars, if it could become as culturally relevant as Star Wars in our particular economic society, then I would be, I think, much more excited about that and less dismissive of Star Wars. I just feel like there's an unnecessary conversation around Star Wars that the films themselves don't merit. As I've said before, for me, Star Wars is a 2 out of 9
I
franchise.
get it, but I think the fact that you don't think they merit the discussion, the level of discussion, is based around the fact that the films themselves don't speak to you. But
it's not just that they don't speak to me. I just don't think they're very good.
Well, you don't.
films.
Sure, but for that reason, you don't care as much. And in your own head, you're like, well, why is everyone talking about this so much? Because this isn't that important. The thing about it is,
I just want to add a counterpoint to that. Mad Max Fury Road, a film that is in the world, the style, the genre of film, I think merits all the discussion in the world.
Sure.
I think that is a film that we should spend as much time talking about, far more than Star Wars.
Agreed.
It has nothing to do with my distaste for the franchise. It has everything to do with my feeling that they're not very good films.
I understand that, but the reason you feel that way about Mad Max is because you think it's an amazing film. You think it's an amazing film.
Right.
I think it's an amazing film. I think The Last Jedi is a really good film. Not as good as Mad Max, but that's not the comparison I'm trying to do. But I think, and whether or not, but here's the thing. Last Jedi is forming, people either are in love with this thing or they fucking despise it. And either way, that is more, there's passion to both sides of those things, a light and a dark, if you will, where you, because you're saying in your opinion, it's just not good. It's just like, whatever. You don't even have that fire on either side. So that's you being like, well, why are we talking about this? But what I'm saying is, culturally, there's a fire.
Right.
And that's why it's there. Now, I understand. Then we go cycle, like we talk about his Facebook message where how it's just the corporations are sort of gearing it towards this stuff. But I mean, if the revelation of this entire conversation is the deck is stacked.
Yeah. That's the revelation.
But that's not a revelation at all. That's yes, the deck has been stacked since before films were a thing.
Right. The deck is stacked in favor of Star Wars. And just remember at some point, Star Wars was an original property. Star Wars was something that nobody thought could be, and that must have been such and now
meet the new boss.
Yeah.
Same as the old boss.
I mean, I think there was an amazing statistic recently, the top 25 films of 2017, there is one original film in that list, and that is Dunkirk. That's the only film that is not a sequel, that is not based on a book and not based on an existing franchise. So we just live in a time where that is the case. And a film like The Florida Project, for example. Now, I love The Florida Project. I think it's a great movie. It's not my most favorite movie in the world, but I think it's a movie that warrants more passionate discussion around it, but the deck is stacked.
I think that film, that The Florida Project, is a film that's topic deserves more passionate discussion around it. I don't think there's not as much of an intricacy, and for better or worse, there's a lot of like emotional intricacy, I guess, but you can talk about that, and that's the thing. But Star Wars and the Star Wars sort of zeitgeist, the world they put forth, is made to be picked apart, where the Florida Project is made to be experienced and for you to think about its subject matter more. I think that's sort of a different thing. So I don't think the Florida Project or a film of that ilk, even if the deck wasn't stacked, I don't think it would do it. It would be culturally helpful, but the conversation wouldn't be as strong. People wouldn't be like, I think this is fucking garbage, or I am, and so like it's not the same thing.
I guess maybe the thing is that kind of rhetoric, the sort of like fanboyish pick apart thing, like you, I think there is something to be said about the passion that it inspires. To me, it's the same sort of psychological rhetoric that happens around sports teams. Which is
it's the exact same thing.
Which is like it's meaningless, but it's like gets people something to do.
Marvel versus DC. Who gives a shit? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, and like I. Jodie Foster said something interesting this week.
How is Jodie doing?
Jodie's doing great. She directed an episode of Black Mirror recently, which I heard was great.
Wonderful.
She said something interesting, which is that she doesn't want to do a superhero film unless it's like psychologically interesting. She's a director, as you know. And she made a comment along the lines, and again, we don't want to like take things out of context. I don't have the comment in front of me, but she said something along the lines of, she feels like these films are poisoning the intellectual well of American subconscious or of American film going. And I think that's probably the harshest way to characterize what she said. James Gunn actually responded to this. James Gunn was asked about this on Twitter, and he said, look, I think this is coming from a slightly old-fashioned point of view, but it's not entirely without any basis whatsoever. I think
that is something that and again, I don't think she's entirely wrong, but that is statistically across all media, be it plays, novels, music, etc. The older generation always says that about the younger generation shit. Now, James Gunn makes a thing like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 that is both things. It's meaningful and it's popcorn fluff. Whereas, let's say Justice League is just popcorn fluff. And there's the reason why Guardians of the Galaxy 2, there's a lot of think pieces on it, and there's only really think pieces about why is this so mediocre about Justice League, and the answer is because there's nothing there.
But it still makes money, and I think that's the issue that I think she's getting at, is that money is a reflection of popularity, even if it's not a reflection of critical consensus.
Sure,
and that signal of popularity. And this is the biggest reach I'm going to make with this.
Here we go.
And it's a reach to be explored in much more detail.
Reed Richards this shit.
In some way, but it is the reason we have Trump as a president. Is the poisoning of our intellectual capacity and the popularization of populist thought without any thinking behind it.
I agree to a point. I think
that it's the biggest reach, and there's a lot to be explained.
Of course, and the only it's not even a rebuttal I'll say to that, because I don't disagree with it on a purely macro level, but on a micro, we are all responsible for our own mental acuity and well-being, and lulled into a false sense of security or not, it's trickery only works if you buy into it. And I understand there's education. I understand there's in the media constantly whatever. But like, look, I came up in the landscape of every piece of content when I was growing up was made to sell me hunks of plastic in the shape.
Still is.
It's still, but not as much anymore. Like,
it's not meant to sell to you right now. It's meant to sell to younger people.
But like action figures and stuff aren't as big now. It's all apps and games and things. But it's the same sort of thing in Marvel, whatever. But like, and I was able to think for myself, as many people I know who are involved in the same sort of sea of interests can too. It's a matter. It's so many societal and I mean, you can tie it with financial things or anything. It is one symptom of it, but I don't think it is, or it's not the actual virus itself. The virus itself is people not being taught in general to think for themselves.
Sure, and I agree with that. I'm sure there's a fun study. I remember there was a case study made with the amount of correlation between obesity and Krispy Kreme locations. And I would love to see a correlation study between the popularity of certain movies and say, for example, the voting against your own interests.
Yeah. This got heavy. Can we
Tom,
just
thank you so much.
Thank you, Tom. Can we just move on to talking about fucking some fish? Can we just do that?
Can I just read a couple more tweets before we go?
But I want to talk about the fish. Fine.
You want to talk about fish fucking?
Yeah, but no. You know what? The listeners. I want to hear from the listeners more than talk about fish fucking.
We just had a nice tweet from Jonathan Blade, a great Twitter name again.
Oh God, I love it.
Who lumped us in with their favorite podcasts of the year. Movie Bob is still his greatest of all time, but we were in amongst his favorite podcasts of the year.
I agree with the Movie Bob stuff. Check out Movie Bob over at geek.com, or his movie, The Movie Bob, I believe is on YouTube.
And Alias wanted to, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Alius, it's spelled
sure.
Aelius, wanted to say, I wanted to weigh in on our debate around high esteem and love, which I would characterize as the KFC milkshake debate. You people can go back and listen to that in our Jingle All the Way episode.
Does KFC even have milkshakes?
I don't even remember. I haven't had one since I was like a little kid.
Okay, I don't think they do.
Maybe not. Maybe it was only a New Zealand thing. But Alias wanted to say, I have to weigh in on your debate around high esteem and love from the latest episode. There are things that I know are trash, but I love them anyway. If people can't love trash, then how do you explain anime?
Sick bird.
I have not watched enough anime to comment on that, but thank you for weighing in.
I even have to do this. I'm sorry. That was sick bird.
Why have you not pulled that out more often?
I don't know, because I don't want to abuse it.
Yeah, that is like, you could use that every time we get into an argument.
just shut it down quick.
But moving along to some just the time
amphibian lovemaking. I just got a couple tweets right now. Amphibian lovemaking, not fish fucking. I am sorry.
I think fish fucking is fine.
But he's not a fish, and they were in love.
Why is he not?
Spoiler alert. No, he's an amphibian. I think he's credited as amphibian,
because he can walk and he has that thing.
Yeah.
He would be right at home in Kevin Costner's Waterworld, right?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, maybe this is a sequel. We don't know.
I'm pretty sure this is a prequel to Hellboy.
Oh, or a sequel to Waterworld, an alternate timeline, because the smokers. Oh, no.
Tell us what we're talking about this week, Matthew Kroll.
The Shape of Water. I'm just going to read the movie description, and then we'll get into Guillermo Del Toro and why he's so fucking lovable. In a 1960s research facility, Alyssa, a mute janitor, forms a relationship with a mysterious aquatic creature.
Aquatic?
Aquatic?
That's the way
Aquatic?
Aquatic.
I'm from New England. Park your car in Harvard Yard and pay the guy a quarter.
Aquatic sounds like a duck.
Aquatic.
Aquatic sounds like you're about to quack.
You're bad. Go to the fucking fish museum. What do they call it? An aquatic aquarium. Go to the aquarium.
Aquatic.
Right then.
Aquatic.
Anyway, that's what the movie is. Guillermo Del Toro back at it again. This hokey, lovable man.
I have to say, Guillermo Del Toro is probably the inciting incident for this podcast without even realizing it.
What did he do?
He made a film that it was the first film that you and I saw together.
Oh, Pacific Rim?
It was Pacific Rim. You and I saw, and I got to be honest with you, it was the moment you and I realized we had very different tastes, because I walked out of that movie and go, man, I fucking hated that movie. And you were like, I fucking loved that movie.
It was really fun.
And it was like, huh. There's something to, and we were like talking about it to each other, and it was like, I think, and it is, Pacific Rim is exactly the film that would divide us 100%.
And then we come back with Mad Max.
Yeah, and I think it was the first time that you and I like got to talking about our differences of opinion. Yeah. So Guillermo Del Toro, whether you realize it or not, you are the reason this podcast exists.
Oh, he's the best. I mean, look, Hellboy, Pan's Labyrinth, Pacific Rim I liked. You know what I'm really sad about? Again, this is just speaking to my sort of sensibilities. Him and Kojima's Silent Hill project when Konami tanked that, fuck Konami, go Jim Sterling. That was really sad when that was gone. And
so you're a fan of it.
I am, and never have I seen a thing of his where I'm like, I didn't walk out enjoying it.
Right.
I hate the term, but I think he's one of the only people I would use it for. Prolific. He's just sort of
makes a lot of stuff.
He makes a lot of stuff, but like really like a lot of worthwhile stuff. Meaning everything I've seen of his is incredibly worthwhile.
His name value has meaning to you.
If he is attached to a project, instantly that project has enjoyable societal clout in my mind. And this was it's funny because if you take this premise, even the premise I read, and that's not a great one, but like this is basically a spiritual successor to what if the woman was actually into the creature from the Black Lagoon kidnapping her. That's kind of what it is.
Right.
And he said in an interview, I think it was on Kimmel, that he's been like wanting to make this since he was like planning it since he was 6.
There you go.
Because he's like, oh, I mean, the girl.
He had some goldfish that he was really attached to.
Well, no, he saw a creature from the Black Lagoon, and he was like, "Oh, well, the girl's unconscious." She, like, with his little kid mind, you know, he's like, "Oh, she's probably having fun," or like whatever, and like it sort of stuck with him, so he's been trying to make it. But you know far more directors' names than I do, but I can't think of another director that, with this premise, that I would want to see their take on it more than Guillermo Del Toro.
I will say this about Guillermo Del Toro. First off, he was in New Zealand for about 4 or 5 years working on the Hobbit prequels, and he is, by all accounts, a lovely man. A friend of mine was trying to get funding for his first feature film, and he knew someone who knew Guillermo Del Toro, and Guillermo, you know, like they basically asked him, "Would you come out to a fundraiser for us to raise money for my first feature film?" And Guillermo agreed. He was like, "I'm happy to help any independent filmmaker get their first film made." This year's movie, It, directed by Andy Muscati, I think his name is. I'm probably saying that wrong. Only exists because Guillermo Del Toro saw Andy's first short film, Mama, and loved it and agreed to help him finance his first feature film, the adaptation of Mama. So he is a lovely, lovely man. I actually sat next to him at a play I saw, Waiting for Godot, with Ian McKellen, and Guillermo Del Toro was next to me, and he's just a lovely, lovely guy.
Did he smell like cinnamon?
He seems like he would, right? He just
seems like you just want to be around him all the time.
Yeah, I think he's from all accounts of everyone I know who worked with him at on The Hobbit, they said he is just a wonderful person to be around.
Gregorious.
Gregorious. I'm not sure if that's. It probably is the right term. I have to think about that.
He's loud, but he's always fun. You're never annoyed by him.
They wouldn't describe him as loud. He's very intelligent. He's very
I know,
mannered.
but like and I'm only going off of the multiple interviews I've seen of him, but he's always very excited and he's talking like this. He's very open and excited about everything, which
also,
seems
remember
nice.
We did our review of The Devils, and he is a passionate supporter of that film.
Oh,
and you can see every interview of him talking about he's a cinephile in the truest sense. He's also written a book about Hitchcock, which I've always wanted to read, but it's only available in Spanish. He wrote it before he was a film, before he made his first film, Kronos.
Buy it, throw it on Google Translate. There won't be any problems.
And speaking of which, that fundraiser that I went to, he talked about how he got Kronos made, and it is just it's a lovely story. Here's the thing about my relationship to Guillermo del Toro movies. I think he's a wonderfully talented filmmaker. I think, and I think he is incredibly gifted in almost every aspect of filmmaking. But I've never loved any single one of his films, even Pan's Labyrinth. And I have a strange relationship to Pan's Labyrinth, which is I saw Pan's Labyrinth and I said, this is by all accounts a perfect movie. I cannot fault this movie in any way. I think it is from start to finish. There is a degree of perfection in here that is impenetrable, but I don't love it, and I can't quite fall in love with this movie. And this is more of a me thing than the movie thing, because I know that film is perfect. I can see how well executed, how well conceived that movie is. And I think the same about Hellboy. I again, Hellboy is not for me, but I watched Hellboy 1, I was like, that is way better than it should be. And I watched Hellboy 2, and I was like, that is way, way better than it should be.
Yeah.
It is, that's how these movies should feel. Like even if I don't love it, I'm like, oh, I see I see why people would, and I see what's going on here.
These movies, if you look at the liner or just like a one or two sentences about them, should just be a garbage fire. But he manages to make them, even if they're not your cup of tea, he manages to make them the most delicious pot of chamomile you've ever had.
That's it. I didn't love Pacific Rim. In fact, I outright really disliked Pacific Rim. But at the same time, there were moments in Pacific Rim where I was like, this guy is good. Well, he knows what he's doing. Particularly the scenes around the young the Japanese girl as she was a young child. I think that stuff is really, really good.
It's interesting because Pacific Rim 2, which he's not directing, the trailer came out, and at first I was like, ooh, cool. But I saw it at Comic-Con, so I think the nerd was leaking into my opinion.
Yeah.
And then the interesting thing to me was I watched the trailer again. I'm like, oh, this has zero magic. This is like this is the thing that this is a Guillermo Del Toro film with his, but you could fucking see the void that he left,
right?
And it's going to be soulless and kind of monstrous in its own right,
right? But so I'm gonna jump right into just my thoughts about The Shape of Water, which are exactly the same thoughts I have.
We're about 36 minutes in. Let's talk about this movie.
Which are exactly the same thoughts I have about Pan's Labyrinth, which is that The Shape of Water is a great movie. You should go see it. There is no doubt in my mind that 99.9999% of the people that listen to this podcast will love the hell out of this movie because it is immaculately crafted. It is beautifully written. It is heartfelt. It juggles so many different strands of story in a way that most people could never fathom and brings them all together beautifully. It is the notion that we would have a central mythological creature that is a man in a suit as opposed to a CGI creation.
God bless it.
Works so well in this movie that in itself is just a sight to behold. Couple that with the fact that ultimately while this movie is political and it has a sense of social conscience around it, it is also at the very core of it a love story that is earnest, that is heartfelt. Couple that on top of the same thing that I loved about Pan's Labyrinth was that it is not afraid to shy away from both sexuality and violence in equal measures. And that is
not shy away.
Yeah, it's not shy away from those two things. And that is something that I've always talked about on this podcast. Is something that I really appreciate when a film has the guts to basically treat both those subject matters with equal zest and vigor. That said, all of that said, and I've been thinking about this for a long time, is I still don't love this film. And I know in order to fully engage with this movie, the thing that you need is to be in love with Sally Hawkins' character and the love that she feels for the asset, the creature played by Doug Jones. And I just don't feel it. Now, the interesting thing is Guillermo Del Toro talked a lot about how he listened to the soundtrack for Punch Drunk Love while writing this, and the soundtrack for this film was kind of orchestrated around John Bryan's score for Punch Drunk Love, which is a score that I love. And I wanted to think about my relationship to Punch Drunk Love and my relationship to The Shape of Water. Punch Drunk Love is a movie where I am in love with that movie. I am completely in love with that movie. And the distinction there is, I was thinking about my response again, is that when I'm in love with a movie, the boundary between me sitting in the theater and the movie basically melts away, and there is no boundary anymore, and I'm just in the movie. And that didn't happen with The Shape of Water. And I think the reason is that while everything works in this movie, while the writing is beautiful and wonderfully considered and everything sets up and pays off perfectly, and not just in terms of like we have a scene that sets up something and then it pays off later, but that scene is also connected to the theme of the entire film. It's not just that. I think the problem for me there is I can see the writing in this movie. I can see the work that's going on to make this feel constructed, and the boundary between the film and myself watching this movie never quite melts away. Now, again, that is a personal response, and that is something that I just simply haven't quite managed to come over, and it is literally there's a je ne sais quoi, like a little X factor that is missing for me personally. But it is a wonderful film. It's a wonderful film to experience.
I'll tell you what my version of that is, because I have a very similar outlook, but for a different reason. I don't think it's the writing. I'll get into, or seeing the writing on the wall, so to speak. But again, praise. The whole thing is amazing. It's like an Abe Sapien origin story from Hellboy, which I loved. It's not really, but it might as well be.
Yeah.
Everyone acted their faces off. Michael Shannon just killed it. Sally Hawkins just destroyed this on multiple. Octavia Spencer killing it. It was an all-star cast just doing all-star things. Another thing I like, just from a technical aspect, real quick, they shot most of it dry for wet. Which only one actual shot is underwater, and that's slowing the camera down, putting fog in the thing. It just it's so fucking cool.
Yeah,
and it looked great, and I loved how, despite it being a love story, and it's sort of doing the same thing like we were talking about societal norms, unconventional couples in the 1960s are the good guys trope, helped in the midst of the racism, sexism, etc. of the time. It didn't shy away from the fact that one of the two love interests was a legit cat-eating monster, like it, and monster being something that you don't understand, but something that doesn't definitely does not sit within our societal norms.
Right.
And them, it's real hard to make a character empathetic after it eats a house cat that you've loved after the first third.
It's proverbially killing the cat.
Yeah. So, but where I thought, and I don't know what this is a trope in a couple films lately that has been a bit bugging me. The beginning of the love story feels great, and the end of the love story, and when they're actually in love, feels great. Them falling in love here, I don't 100% buy. And it's because, I don't think it's because of the writing. I was never taken out of the film. In fact, I came out of this movie, I blinked and it was over, and then I loved it. And then as I was sort of writing up my notes for this episode, I was like, well, hold on, there has to be some stuff I don't like. And I was like, well, I guess the love story felt forced because that was the whole point of the movie. And then I was like, well, why did it feel forced? And I think it's because the way they handle the asset, the amphibian man, this river god, as we're told, was worshipped in South America as a river god, is they treat it more, or let me, and I'm saying this as the writers, not the film itself. The writers treat this more as an intelligent animal and not a animalistic type humanoid level consciousness.
Right.
And that to me is difficult to wrap my head around from a falling in love with it in a romantic sense level.
Yeah, it's
because essentially the way I want to say animal is portrayed as opposed to character. It's kind of bestiality at a certain point. Now, I'm not saying we don't understand. I'm not saying dolphins aren't smarter than people, but it's not a human.
But you don't want to fuck a dolphin.
Yeah, it's not presented to us as a familiar enough humanoid consciousness. Now, but so on a, even though 99% of this film works on a purely like this is the world's rules they set up level, that doesn't fall in step with the rest of it until you take a step back. And especially with the very end, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, at the end with spoilers, when you start looking at it in a bit more of a fairy tale for adults, allegorical, the message is more important than the nitty gritty of what's going on sort of sense.
Yeah.
Then it works.
Yeah.
But I do think if you're looking like, because it's so close to perfect, there is just this this little bit that's like, well, that part didn't hit. I feel like if they just played the river god a little closer, a little less animal and a little more man or human, I would have been able to buy into the of the moments that they're falling in love.
Right. And I think you're right. The sense that this is a fable, that there's a mythological quality to the story allows you to forgive that because you're right. In pragmatic terms, the love story between Sally Hawkins's character, Alicia Esposito, that's right, and I'm just going to call him Abe from now on.
Yeah, call him Abe.
Call him Abe. is entirely one-sided in this film. It's entirely about her, and we never really get a sense of what his.
There's probably some Stockholm syndrome going on.
I mean, this is the thing. He is captured. He's a prisoner, and then he's having sex with his captor. And you know,
well, kind of. I mean, his liberator / captor.
Yeah, but you know, going from one prison to an even smaller prison, you know, a bathtub.
Hey, at least he's not getting shock baton.
Exactly. You know, kind of could feed into that, and you know, there are, but again, the love story isn't necessarily about these two people coming together. It's kind of more in the Rapunzel, you know, Cinderella-esque sort of version of it, where the handsome prince is just this sort of figure, and that's what Abe is to her. He is the figure that accepts her muteness. Not, you know, she even has the line, he doesn't see me for what I lack, but he's excited to see me, and
because he can't see that because he's an animal.
But in the sort of fable-esque sense of the world.
It's wonderful.
You know,
like when you find that person, and I say this about relationships all the time, everybody has baggage. The important thing about finding a partner is finding someone whose baggage matches.
Exactly. I mean, in Punch Drunk Love, the love story between Adam Sandler and I'm forgetting the actress's name, but she's wonderful, from Breaking the Waves, and I've completely gone blank on her name. But the love story between those two characters is one-sided, and it doesn't make sense. But the film kind of wraps it in this sort of fable fairy tale.
Warm blanket.
Yeah, and it kind of, you just accept it. For example, you know, the little logic things like this is, you know, like Michael Schubert's character says, like, this is the most important asset that we will ever see in this facility.
Because they think it'll make them be able to go to space, like if they rip it apart and figure out how it works.
The janitor can just walk in and see it and touch it on as it's there. You know, kind of things like that. They don't make logical sense, but the film again wraps up in this world that makes it work.
Yeah, and also, just spoiler alert too, just real quick, we'll get into it now because we're coming 33/4 through. Eventually, Elise does rescue and brings her to her. It brings Abe to her apartment, and then they're like waiting for high tide to hit so the canal will open.
Yeah.
You're telling me he wouldn't just be okay in the canal? Wait, like there's a calendar that they're counting down, which gives them the opportunity.
But you gotta have them in the bathtub so you can use them as like as a Hitachi magic wand for the next few weeks.
Well, no, that's not nice.
But the other, you know, like so this is where we'll get into the negatives about this film for me, or at least. You know, again, I don't want to preface these as complete negatives. They're just things that didn't connect to me, even though I think they actually work. And again, if that division between you and the film, you know, like melts away, then all of this stuff works perfectly. And again, on paper, all of this stuff works. But I did find the one thing I found troubling was the way in which the film uses sexual violence and racial inequality as shorthands for malevolence. So for example,
define that. Sorry.
So there's a scene in which Richard Jenkins, I love Richard Jenkins, he's such a wonderful actor, is basically there's a man who serves him pie, a waiter at a pie store that he continues to visit. And Richard Jenkins is obviously gay in a time that isn't warm to that idea, and he makes an advance towards that person and he's promptly rejected. Immediately following that waiter basically ejects two African American patrons to the restaurant, and that is a clear signal to the for the film that this is not a good person. And it works. I'm not saying it doesn't work, but it's a shorthand that feels like a shorthand to me that doesn't quite land. Similarly, Michael Shannon all of a sudden. It's not all of a sudden. It's threaded because it works in the film. It's threaded throughout the film. Michael Shannon has some he's making advances towards Sally Hawkins because she can't talk. Yeah. And he becomes, you know, for lack of a better word, a little rapey, and intimates that he would take advantage of her. And again, I find that's a strange shorthand to introduce for his malevolence when his malevolence is clearly on display in the film. And to me, there are moments where I feel I sort of like I feel the writing as opposed to embracing it.
I think so that I'm going to go.
Michael Shannon also makes racial intimations towards Octavia Spencer's character in the quote that I mentioned at the beginning of the film. Again, it's a kind of shorthand. It works, but I find them like troubling shorthands.
So I don't think I'm going to go backwards. I think the Michael Shannon with the racism thing, I think is very baked into his character. I don't really think that's particularly shorthand. The part though about him sort of forcefully coming on to Elise is interesting because it's like when you have a hated character already, and like you already hate him.
Yeah.
No, let's make him do one other awful thing.
Yeah,
and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
like just you could make that scary without making it rapey. Like he's already awful. Everyone hates him. This isn't going to make you hate him more. It's just like another awful thing where it's like torture porny, which is I get that. As far as the shorthand about the side
the waiter, the bartender,
the bartender thing, because that's a sort of side arc. So Giles is Richard Jenkins. Character. One of my favorite characters Richard Jenkins has done since probably Cabin in the Woods.
Oh, yeah.
That's sort of a side story, and he's like an out of work illustrator because photos are taking over advertising, and it's like just sort of a turning of the times sort of thing. I don't think. Okay, yes, that is shorthand. Mm-hmm. I think it's well used shorthand, and I'm going to use Star Wars as an example.
Okay,
because Star Wars takes too long in its B plots, and its B plots get boring. If they could use a little more shorthand, kind of like they did with this B plot in this movie. Yes, is it a fast way to get shit done? Yes. Do I want more of that story based on the weight they've put on its own thing in the movie? Not really. I want to get back to the other stuff. I'm more interested in all the other characters, and that side plot is a nice, like, oh yeah, real people too.
Right.
But I want that to be as efficient personally as possible. So I'm not, what would take me out, and I think this is just a preference thing. What would take me out is if they spent too much time there and then jumped back tonally to amphibian lovemaking. Like it's just, it felt right to me. It was like a nice reprieve. There's a breath. Okay. Social message. I get it. And then back to the A plot line.
I think the thing I would say is that this film in many ways, it has a political sentiment on its mind. And that political sentiment, I think, is about this idea of
the Russians are trying to steal our fish people.
A repressive society that is not embracing of the other.
Yeah.
And so the other in this film isn't just an amphibious person. It is African-American. It is gay. It is Russian. It is everything that is other is a threat to the normalized society. And women as well. Yeah. Yes. And the problem is that I think the film compounds those things in a way that makes the messaging feel a little bit more on the nose. So I think when the waiter rejects Richard Jenkins' advances because he's not, he's like, whoa, what are you doing? This is not what I meant. I think that's enough to tell that story. But then it continues on for him rejecting the African-American people in the bar as well.
It's exploitive to the point of like batting it out for the cheap seats.
Yeah, it's batting it out for the cheap seats. And it's the same thing with Michael Shannon's character.
I see that.
Michael Shannon's character I found him to be evil in an almost cartoonish way.
Well, Movie Bob put it, he's like this type of character starter kit. You cast Michael Shannon.
Exactly.
And I was like, yep.
Yeah, he's evil in a movie sense way. And to a point where it was sort of cartoonish and a little silly. But then when you start adding, like for example, the sexual predatorness of this character on top of that, it just kind of accelerates it into, okay, I get it. You're kind of going a little too far with this. Whereas if you rely on the metaphor of his severed fingers, for example, and just played that out as the central metaphor of the film, then I think that would be enough. But again, none of this stuff doesn't work. All this stuff is tied into theme. It's all tied into what this film is trying to do. For me personally, the thing is I want to say that it's those things, but it might not be at all. It might just be some little X factor in this movie that I just can't quite wrap my head around. But it prevents me from falling in love with this movie, which is what I think needs to happen in order to fully embrace this film.
I have a theory.
Is my cold dead heart?
No, not at all. For once, it's not your cold dead heart.
Yeah.
I think what we were talking about, wow, it's weird this is tying back. I think what we were talking about in the beginning of cultural zeitgeist and discussion of things that some might not deem worthy, and again, maybe Star Wars discussion as opposed to the Florida Project is batting it for the cheap seats. I think this what Guillermo's trying to do here is use this shorthand, use these cheap seat hits to punch engagement up for these people that aren't able to read the subtext as quickly, that aren't trained due to movies to read the subtext this quickly and clearly. These are the extra things, like if you're just watching it and like turning your brain off, that's gonna punch you in the brain for a second and be like, oh shit, fuck, that guy's racist.
Yeah.
Or oh shit, he's being a sexual predator. Like when before like a slight hand move or something that some people might get, maybe not everyone can. And I think these are moments that are added possibly to get the maximum amount of response out of the maximum amount of people. And I know as a filmmaker myself, I would rather add those in and get the extra 15 or 20% of people and have people like you and I they're thinking about this and talking about it for an hour almost be like, well, that was a little much.
Yeah.
I'd rather have that than have some people just not get it.
Well, and again, none of this doesn't work, and that's the really tricky line here as well. Is the film does work, and it works for a number of reasons, but it is, and I think I'm just trying to figure out what is the X factor that makes this not work for me, and I think I think the extrapolation point there is, and it's going to come into another review we're going to be doing shortly, but it's the amount of breathing room that you give the audience in order to discover the love in this film and to discover the malevolence in this film. And as much as I had the same response to Pan's Labyrinth, I was far more taken aback by the evil presented in Pan's Labyrinth, I guess because of the wartime scenario, than I was by the evil presented in this film, which I felt kind of had this cartoonish edge to it.
It did. Well, yeah, it's interesting because for Pan's Labyrinth, a film that's all about make-believe, trying to get through its own, get you through bad times.
It's particularly violent. It's particularly...
and in this, the tone is a little more like, cartoonish or like vaudevillian.
Yeah.
There's a dance number.
There's a dance, and
I love the dance number.
The dance number works well. I think everything with Doug Jones, other than the notion that we talked about earlier, which is that the relationship that he forms with Elise is one-sided, and we're not exactly sure how it worked. How. We're not sure.
Alyssa. I keep
how she feels about it. But again, there's that wonderful sense of cinematic symmetry that this film plays upon. That someone who's studied Hitchcock as much as Guillermo Del Toro, as someone who's well steeped in cinema, would like lay in there. For example, the decaying of Michael Shannon's fingers as they slowly grew, blacken throughout the film, mirrored with the decay of Abe as he is further and further away from his home. This fish scales start coming off, and we know that there is this sort of
there's only so much magic green dust you could put in the bathtub.
The sense that he's falling apart. The sense that this is a spoiler here, but Alyssa's voice has been taken away because of these scratches, that we presume something awful has happened. She says something happened to her when she was a child. And that is the thing that Abe rips away from Michael Shannon's character at the very end. And then those things become gills. There's a wonderful cinematic poetry to all of that, the sort of the sense of structure and symmetry to all of that.
Abe's got the magic.
And also, like, for example, even just little things like when Michael Schulberg's character is shot through the face,
Michael Shannon?
Michael Schulberg, who's a wonderful actor, who's going to be again.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
Who's shot in the face, and then Michael Shannon's character Richard grabs him like a fish and like drags him along.
Yep.
On salt. On these giant salt mountains, there's this wonderful cinematic poetry at play here. He's clearly, Guillermo Del Toro is clearly an artist of the highest order. He's clearly a person who knows and understands the construction of cinema in a way that most people do not. I just don't know what it is that I can't quite fall in love in this. With this
It is the
film.
thing. I don't think you don't know. I think we've laid out. I mean, you laid out your reason. I understood it.
Yeah.
I laid out my reason. I understood that too. Like, I think there's things to be said about the structure, and you can have the greatest building materials all the way through and build a piece of art that's like 99.9% perfect for a lot of people. But had you done it, had you had the skill or the time or whatever resource you would need to do to create something like that, all of us would do it slightly different.
Here's the thing. What he's done, and I'm going to relate this back to me as a filmmaker and my thoughts about filmmaking. What he's done here in this film is everything I wish I could do.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, it's everything that when I sit down to write a film, I think, oh, this is the way you should do it because it makes logical, perfect sense. I remember once I wrote a screenplay and I had it analyzed by a writer in another country who, came to me with some notes. And one of the things he came to me with was he was like, the distinction between true cinema and just storytelling is that cinema speaks to your amphibious brain. It speaks to this sort of
Lizard brain's bad. Oh, amphibian brain might be better.
Yeah, it speaks to this sort of instinctual sense of self, and this is why, for example, Hitchcock works so well because it speaks to this anxiety and paranoia that you have in real life. And I remember the year 2008, two movies that came out that year were There Will Be Blood and No Country for Old Men. No Country for Old Men is without a doubt a perfect movie. Perfect in more ways than I can ever describe. There Will Be Blood is a film that I was like, I couldn't quite figure it out. It took me 3 goes of watching it before I really started to fall in love with that movie. But the thing is that I found over time, as I was thinking about it, the imperfections of There Will Be Blood led me to want to explore that movie much further than I wanted to explore No Country for Old Men. And the thing is here is that there is a degree of perfection in The Shape of Water that again is impenetrable. It's obnoxious to cite that as a failure of the film because it's not. It is a perfect film. But there is something. If there is any X factor to my love of movies, it is again that wall between me and the movie, and I couldn't quite get over this wall. And I hope we get to review it. I don't know if we're gonna get to review it, but I watched the movie over the break called A Ghost Story.
I want to see that.
The David Lowery film, and that is a film that is no way nearly as tightly constructed as this movie, but it is a film that I completely 100% fell in love with. And it is a film that I forgot that I was sitting in a room watching it. And I melted away with
I get that. And what you're describing, and you're going to hate this analogy, but what you're describing of that feeling is the way I feel with certain Marvel films.
Right.
It's that ability to just rip my consciousness out of my body and put whatever it is in that world for however long the film goes, and then you get thrown back in. And this, I do agree for whatever reason. Though, then again, my final thing is, you should go see this movie. Go see it before it's out of theaters. It's excellent. The Shape of Water. Go now. Spend your money. Yeah. It is worth it. Trust me.
Yeah.
And it went by. The time was enjoyable and quick, but it never I think, for me, the little bit of the midpoint of the love story just not hitting was sort of a bit of a like, okay, like I'm not fully enthralled. But it's so much better than a ton of shit out. Like you should go see it. I think. I feel like I'm talking in circles. Shahir, should people pay money to see this movie?
Without a doubt, you should pay money to see this movie. You should go out, see it. You should see it 2 or 3 times if you can. It is a movie that if you do get over that wall, there are riches to be had in this that are delightful.
I want to show people this movie. That's the other thing too. I really like it when I could be like, most everyone I know will like this movie if I can get them to watch it.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
And Sally Hawkins, if you do enjoy her in this movie, please go see a movie called Happy Go Lucky, a Mike Leigh movie that she is just an absolute delight, and I'm sure many listeners will know that film. The other, just a little side thing here is I love that nobody in this film is a draw card of an actor. Like, it's not like, oh, Michael Shannon's in this movie, I've got to go see this. Or Sally Hawkins in this movie, I got to go see this. Richard Jenkins is in this movie, I got to go see it. But all of those actors are the perfect casting for this film. They're names to people who know films, and they're perfectly cast in this movie. And it's like you could. The case in point here is Sally Hawkins's character. You could cast a young starlet who's on her way up in that role, who possibly has sort of a more how do I say this? Because sexuality is an important characteristic about this character. You could have a very sexy woman play this character, and I'm not saying Sally Hawkins is not a very attractive woman. I'm just saying Sally Hawkins' sexuality is a very different kind of sexuality to say if you had Natalie Portman in that role or something like that. You know what I mean?
Well, I would say that Sally Hawkins is it's a human sexuality as opposed to what is sold to us as sexuality.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I like a lot.
Yeah, which I liked a lot. And I think outside of Michael Shannon's sort of cartoonish villainness, but even he has an interesting arc, and his backstory about his role in the military is fascinating, and it works, and it really does play in this movie. So, as much everything here works. This will be leading into my final thoughts. Everything here is wonderfully executed. It's beautifully executed. I have a difficult time. I just think the key factor here is that you need to, for me, you need to fall in love with this movie, and I didn't quite fall in love with this movie. I know, was it Rix Reed?
Damn it, so close to making me just think of a Marvel.
Yeah, Rix Reed. You must, if you can, read Rix Reed's review of this film, where again he cites I think he says Guillermo Del Toro is from Spain. He gets Guillermo Del Toro's name wrong. He calls him Benicio del Toro. Yeah. It's a wonderful piece of writing from supposedly master film critic who might be losing. I don't know.
Gonna happen to us all.
Could happen to us all. Maybe it's happened to us already, and we just don't know it yet.
Oh my God, conscience is a bitch. Anyway, this has been the only podcast about the film The Shape of Water. Shahir, when you're not pouring water into various shapes that may or may not cause you to fall in love with said liquid, where can folks find you?
Oh, did you just call me a bartender? Is that what I do? If I'm pouring liquids into various shapes that cause me to fall in love, I'm a bartender.
Or that would be to cause other people. Were you
just like trying to be the Riddler just then? You were the Riddler,
Sure.
You can find me stretching Matt's analogies on my website, although I won't do that on my website at all. www.shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD, which is links to my Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff, which you would never want to see. Matt, when you are making analogies about cinema in ways that leads me to believe that you might be Batman villain.
Sure.
Where could people find you hiding in your lair?
You can find me kicking the doors of the Batcave down at MATTHEWKROL.com for my life and works. Also Skeletor, the number 4 PREZ on Instagram, or Emperor MSK on Twitter. Also, thank you so much for the iTunes reviews that have been rolling in. They have been very nice. I have enjoyed them. And please keep writing us onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. Tell us what you thought of The Shape of Water. What's your favorite shape of water? What's the best container to pour water into?
If you have Wonder Twins memes, please send them our way. I love the Wonder Twins. They're the goofiest superheroes.
And we will giggle. Thank you so much. We will see you next week for, I don't know what's next week, because you know what? Sometimes life just it's not planned out in advance, Shahir.
Perhaps life is fluid, like a liquid that you might find made up of 2 equal parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen, that flows through your toilet.
Wow. Yep. Okay.
That's the only podcast about